Hi, Christian. Good morning to you. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Nick?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for asking. And thank you so much for saying yes to be interviewed today. I'd like to introduce myself formally. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again. The juxtaposition of your very soul. When I read your profile, as what I do before I get on any interviews, I was amazed. So a lot to unpack, but let me read a bit of your introduction for our listeners, and then we can get right into our conversation.
Yeah, right.
So, hello everyone. We have Christian Espinosa here with us, a renowned thought leader. Christian is most known as the best-selling author of The Smartest Person in the Room, which explores the limitations of seeking validation through achievement and the desire to be the brightest intellect in any room. With a deep desire to inspire others to harness their innate wisdom, overcome perceived barriers, and summon the courage to tread new paths, Christian authored his latest book, The In Between: Life in the Micro. This book chronicles his remarkable transformation from a me against the world mindset, cultivated during his tumultuous upbringing, to his evolution as a compassionate global citizen committed to uplifting humanity. A dynamic entrepreneur, Christian built and successfully sold Alpine Security, a cybersecurity business. He founded and currently leads Blue Goat Cyber. He also has an array of professional and personal development certifications. Now, his expertise extends beyond the confines of the corporate world. He's a white hat hacker, a captivating keynote speaker, a perceptive real estate investor, and a connoisseur of heavy metal music and fiery cuisines. He's also spent time in the Mexican jungle with Mayan shamans. He's a sea licensed skydiver and is a paddy dive master. Whatever Christian tries, he tends to master. Wow. Welcome, Christian.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, before we get to the nitty gritty of things, can you share with us what was it like growing up as a Christian Espinosa?
Growing up was very difficult for me. I grew up very poor. My mother was addicted to pain meds and other drugs. So my childhood was very chaotic. The police would always be over. There'd be car wrecks, a lot of violence. I was a kid at school that couldn't afford new clothes and had the little lunch card. People made fun of me for being poor. Yeah, it was very chaotic. Not a lot of stability, and I just didn't really feel safe either growing up in my environment.
Wow. Thank you for being so candid about that. And what is your backstory, like your career, the journey of your career?
Well, due to my childhood, I didn't have any money for college, so I decided I developed this determination to get out of my environment, and I applied for every scholarship possible, and applied myself in school. I was number 2 in my class, and all state football and stuff like that. And I applied to all the military academies, and I got accepted to the Air Force Academy. So my career started in the military. I went to the Air Force Academy for 4 years, and then was active duty in the U.S. military for 6 years. And then after that, I became a contractor and focused on information assurance for cybersecurity, and then eventually started my own business.
Wow. Okay, I have a lot of questions in my head right now. Military, why didn't you pursue like the military route? Like, was it always been your passion to be in, I think, cybersecurity engineering, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the military route was primarily because it was my ticket out of my environment. And I watched the movie Top Gun a long time ago and wanted to fly jet. So, as a way out of my childhood, but it's also a way to fly jets. I ended up not flying jets. I ended up doing cybersecurity because the military made a lot of cutbacks on pilot slots. But that was my way out of Arkansas primarily. Arkansas is where the state I was when I left to go to the military and get out of my environment. And the irony is my environment was really unstructured, unsafe, no security, and the military was exactly the opposite. It's almost too much the opposite.
Yeah,
I
it's
was like the
rigid.
adult, and my mother wasn't really a parent growing up. And then I went to the military where everyone's telling me what to do all the time. So it was quite the
Yeah, was it a culture shock for you?
it was a major culture shock. Yes.
Would you say that was your defining moment in your career, or do you have like a point, like a pivotal point?
I have a couple of defining moments. I think one of the biggest ones was what put me on my path of entrepreneurship. I was working for a company. I was a vice president in a company, and I was doing penetration testing or ethical hacking of aircraft and a few other things. And I just had this persistent like run in with the CEO and this like kind of negative energy. It was draining me emotionally, it was draining my soul on a daily basis. And I didn't feel like I wanted to work in that environment anymore. So the stress got so high that I just decided one day to quit the job without having another job lined up. And I had never done that because, as I mentioned, from my childhood, there was no security, no stability. So I kind of like went the way opposite and always sought that in my life, which is a interesting juxtaposition. So I quit without having another job lined up. And that was the best decision I ever made. It wouldn't matter that they would offer me millions of dollars to stay. The job was too stressful. And I valued my mental well-being and my emotional well-being much more than that job or the money. So yeah, I quit, and then I decided to just figure it out and go on the path of entrepreneurship. So in hindsight, we don't often like those kind of moments, but those moments are often the moments that change the trajectory of our life.
I love that because I can relate to a certain degree because I was in the corporate world for a while, for 15 years, to be honest. And then now, like you, I think I've had enough of the pressure of working for other people, though I know that I am good in something, but it seems I cannot find my way in that. Like, yeah, it's like I have to create my own stage, I would say, to just shine, right? And I think for you, it's the entrepreneur route. And I guess you've always been good and you know your forte, your cup of tea is in cybersecurity, and that's why you harness your knowledge in that, right? Like, like for me, I like talking. So, and also the impetus of my podcast is because I felt worthless because of the amount of I would say abuse from my previous organization.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I just wanted to reach out to people like yourself, see if they also had similar experiences and how did they get through to the other side.
Well, for me, it's a cycle. I feel worthless and hopeless quite a bit. I try to make myself very resourceful and very resilient. So no matter what happens, I can get through it. It's been part of my training and sort of life mission. And with entrepreneurship, there's always things that happen that are very difficult. I remember with my first company, I was having a really hard time making payroll. I asked my friends, who I thought were my friends, for some money. I just needed like a little bit of money for like a few days. And all the people that I thought would lend me money wouldn't lend me money. So I was literally like kind of in the fetal position on the floor crying, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And what I ended up doing was, you know, making a charge from my company to my personal credit card so I could float the company for a while, and then, paying my reversing the charge later on is what I did. But that's part of the journey is those valleys, and you have to get through the valley to get to the next peak, in my opinion.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Christian, for that. Okay. Now we're gonna go to your book. What made you decide to write The Smartest Person in the Room? The root cause and new solution for cybersecurity.
That was written primarily about my entrepreneur journey with my first company. I decided to write it because I was on this fence. I was really frustrated with the industry, almost got out of cybersecurity. But then I thought, maybe if I can write a book that describes my view of cybersecurity, what the main issues are, then it would have an impact. So that's what I decided to do. And what really honed me in on the book is in my company, my first cybersecurity company, 99% of my problems were not because my staff lacked technical abilities. It was because my staff lacked emotional intelligence. And in cybersecurity, in life, everybody wants to be significant. They want to feel significant.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in my industry and other high-tech industries, people feel or seek that significance by being what they perceive as smarter than somebody else, which manifests as talking over people's heads, intellectual bullying, and just not a good ideal environment. So my book is about 7 steps that I worked on in my company to resolve that challenge in my company, to bring back the EQ to an already highly rationally intelligent staff.
You brought up a very important and often overlooked things, because in cybersecurity or in high tech industry, everybody is like, you've got to attain all of these certifications, and then once you attain all 5, okay, I'm better than you are. And then again, if you do that, I don't know, whoever, if you're employed or if you started your own journey, it's that cycle of trying to prove something, and almost feeling like you're still in that rat race. So I like when you tie it up to the EQ part of it. So I wanna touch on that. Like, I think there's a question here that you put. What is your 7-step secure methodology? Is it the ones that you wrote in your book, or is it a different one? Hi, I'm Nick Nieras, your host of the Your Wordless podcast. Now, if this real raw stories hit home, don't wait. Please follow, like, and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. For bite-sized inspirational reels, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Don't wait. Your transformation starts today. Thank you, and bye for now.
Yeah, those are the 7 steps I wrote in my book.
Mm-hmm.
I can briefly run through them. I call it the secure methodology because I believe a lot of these challenges that we have in life stem from our own insecurities. So we try to hide them in various ways, and sometimes it comes across as bullying, sometimes as being shy, whatever. Sometimes as being overly, um, the overly. But the 7
Yeah.
steps, the first one is awareness. I think we all need to have some awareness. A lot of people go through life without much awareness. And in the book, I tie a lot of neurolinguistic programming into the book because I'm certified in NLP. And from an awareness perspective, I think what a lot of people forget to understand is we are hardwired in certain ways, our behavior. So if there's a stimulus, we automatically kind of run this program in our brain and react to that stimulus. And if that reaction is not serving us, we need to change that reaction, which will change that behavior. So having the awareness that, if somebody asks you a question and you have a propensity to get defensive, when you feel yourself getting defensive, you can stop that program from running and then run a different one and maybe get curious instead. So our brains do have neuroplasticity. We can install new programs, and that requires you to be aware, though. And the second step is mindset. I'm a proponent of a growth mindset, which means we don't believe we're just the way we are. We believe we can learn new things. We believe we can unlearn bad habits.
I love that.
And our traits are not fixed. So that's the second step. And of course, there's a lot more to these steps in the book and in my course. The third step is acknowledgement. From a ego perspective and just worthy perspective, I think it's important we acknowledge ourselves. For me, this is something I've had a big challenge with in my whole life. I've never felt worthy. I remember standing on the Ironman triathlon, the World Championship in 2005 finish line. And I had never done an Ironman, but I told myself one day I'll do this race. And then 10 years later, I actually crossed the finish line as a racer. And I never even acknowledged myself. I was automatically thinking about the next big thing to do. And I
Right.
realized if I can't acknowledge myself, I'm always chasing more. I'm not going to feel worthy. And I'm not going to be a very good leader because I'm not going to acknowledge other people around. And the fourth,
Wow. That was a good one. Yeah.
Well, it's something I've struggled with. I've never felt enough. I've had to realize that I am enough.
Yeah.
The fourth step is communication. There's an NLP presupposition that states that the meaning of communication is the response you get. So if you're not getting the right response, like in cybersecurity, a lot of people complain they don't get the budget. They complain people don't understand, and this is other industries as well. It shifts the ownership back on you to alter how you communicate. So the message is received and resonates with the person you're communicating with. What we often do is just blame the other person, like, oh, they're just not smart enough to get it. Where the ownership should be on us to change how we communicate so they do get it. And a lot of us walk through life that way, and we wonder why we're not making progress in certain areas. The fifth step is monotasking. It is the opposite of
Focusing
multitasking.
on one. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Concentrated focus on one thing. I believe monotasking helps with two main areas. One of them is it makes you productive instead of busy. If you're multitasking, you're very busy and there's a lot of anxiety. You're always like bouncing from one thing to the other, and you get details mixed up between tasks, and you're constantly doing context switching and forgetting things. It's very inefficient. It's very stressful. Monotasking, do one thing for maybe an hour at a time on your calendar. I use time blocks where I block off my calendar and focus on one thing. That means I don't check my phone. I don't check Slack. I don't check WhatsApp. I just do that one thing, which makes me much more productive. The other reason for monotasking is when you're with somebody and you're not thinking about other things, you're not checking your phone, you have greater presence, and it makes you a better communicator and a better partner, a better friend. It makes you better in all aspects, because people, like for me, I don't want to be with someone and talk to them if they're looking at their phone and not paying attention to me. I just stop talking. And that's what most of us do today versus being present and having that monotasking. And then the sixth step is empathy. In our society today, I feel like there's not much empathy. I feel like there's a division. It's like everyone wants to put certain people in groups. Like there's the pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine in the US. There's the Democrats, the Republicans, pro-gun, anti-gun, doctor, patient. And it's hard to be empathetic when you see your fellow human as separate from you, as a different group. And for
Yeah.
me, like a couple years ago, I almost died from blood clots. I had 6 blood clots in my left leg. And this struck me, like when in my interaction with a doctor, that I was alone in the hospital, and a friend of mine on the phone convinced me to go there. I've been doing Ironman triathlons. I didn't think things like this would happen to people like me.
Yeah.
But I went to the hospital, and the doctor came out after I did a Doppler ultrasound. He came out and told me I had 6 blood clots in my left leg. And I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about blood clots. So I'm like, okay, what does that mean? He said, well, it means you can die or have a stroke at any moment. So I'm kind of like freaking out. I'm here by myself. I start crying. And the doctor, I think he was trying to be empathetic, but what he said is, he's kind of in a nonchalant way. He's like, don't worry. I see this all the time. And it snapped me out of my like feeling my life was overstayed. And I'm like, you know what? I don't see this all the time. This is a first for me. So I think he was trying to be empathetic, but he was looking at it like, I'm the doctor, this is the patient, versus this is a fellow human being. I just told some pretty like devastating news. I just told this person he could die
Take
or
your
have a
time.
stroke and become, a vegetable, or kind of bed, tied to the bed for the rest of his life. So I think we lose sight of the fellow human being thing because of that division, and that's hard to be empathetic. And the final step is Kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese term that means continuous
Continuous
and never-ending
improvement.
improvement or constant improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we often think the road to mastery is we just take a step in a direction and it all falls in place. But if you adopt the philosophy of Kaizen, you realize that as long as you're making small improvements, that's what matters. And it helps you develop the courage to take the first step. Because to develop a new habit, to write a book, to write your second book, to do whatever, you might actually get worse before you get better. And we have to understand that.
And you're going against the grain. You're always testing yourself something new. Like
Yeah.
I'm having my questions, man. Like, how do you get motivated? Like, what is your drive? What is your fuel? Yeah, that is my question to you. What is your fuel? Like, how I was reading your profile and your triathlon after triathlon, and then building a business, selling it, and then building again, writing a book, and then jumping out of a plane.
Yeah. Well, the drive has changed throughout my life. At first, it was externally driven, I think, a little bit, to prove to everybody that I could get out of my childhood, that I wasn't going to become a product of my environment. It was like a me against the world attitude. Like, I'll show everybody. I'll make it happen. That was my drive at first. And then, when I wrote my second book, I realized that seeking these achievements and this validation didn't really, it wasn't helping me. It made me feel good, the journey, but I had to come to terms with, I just need to feel fine with who I am and not worry about having to accomplish anything to feel that way. And that was sort of solidified when I had those blood clots, because I was doing a lot of Ironman triathlons, climbing mountains, doing a lot of active things. And when I had those blood clots, I remember sitting in my car, just like sobbing, thinking, man, my life is over. Like, literally everything I did in my life, they told me I could not do. I couldn't run. I couldn't get on an airplane. I couldn't do anything stressful. I just could sit on my couch, basically, and
Mhm.
take blood thinners. And that really sapped my confidence and made me depressed. I was depressed for quite some time. And then when I'm in those states, I reflect a lot and I try to get out of them, obviously. And I realized that I felt caged. I went from feeling grateful, like I'm alive, to caged, like my life sucks. This is not what the life I want to live. So I decided to stop taking the blood thinners. I got all my blood work done. I got another Doppler ultrasound to make sure there are no remaining clots in my leg, and I reclaimed my health. And when I made that decision, which was gradual but kind of like final, I remember looking at the bottle of blood thinners. I just kind of threw it across the room. I'm like, I'm not doing these anymore. When I made that decision, I went from feeling caged to feeling like inspired again. Like, I've now reclaimed my life the way I want to live it. And that drove me to start my second cybersecurity business, Blue Goat Cyber,
Wow.
which ironically, we focus on medical devices. That's medical device cybersecurity. And I often think that I may not be here if it wasn't for that Doppler ultrasound, this portable Doppler ultrasound device that quickly diagnosed those blood clots in my leg. So it's kind of like come full circle and tied things together for me and give me a passion for my career, for the company, for making sure these medical devices are secure, because they are life-saving devices. I really don't care about cybersecurity and someone's credit card number being stolen. That to me is not as critical as, protecting a device that can save somebody's life.
Wow. So I can see that, like, the team is like you turning everything into something positive. Positive is even an underrated word. Like, whatever that's thrown at you, and you make the decision, okay, this is it. I'm not gonna do this anymore, and I'm changing my trajectory. Or maybe not a change, you just expend more. And also, I love when you said growth mindset, not having a fixed mindset, learning more, expanding, but also accepting that sometimes we need to unlearn certain things, certain patterns, certain belief that we had, maybe growing up, or maybe we picked up along our career, or, I mean, just association with people around us, right? And I love that, because for me, I would like to relate. I've also grew up with certain kind of conditioning. So right now, it took me a long time to learn that I can unlearn and relearn. And it's
Hmm.
like losing my identity just to find myself again. And it's okay.
It's okay, and it's I think important to understand that a lot of people
Yeah.
don't want to change their identity,
No.
and they wonder why
Yeah,
their circumstances don't change.
that is correct.
I had this a person work for me once. He wanted to be a leader in my company, and I was talking to him, And the things I was saying, he interpreted as so he got defensive and said, "So you're asking me to change who I am?" I said, "I guess if you put it that way, I am, because who you are is not the person we need in that role. So you need to become somebody, a new version of yourself." And he ended up quitting. It was too much for him. I think a lot of us want more in life, and we chase it, but the reality is we need to become better versions of ourselves to attract it.
I love that. Yes. Because ultimately we attract what we are, not what we want.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
100%.
Okay, Christian, what is the biggest challenge facing cybersecurity right now? Is it the EQ, or do you have other perspective?
The EQ is part of it. That's
Mm-hmm.
a big part of it. I think the biggest challenge is this thing called cyber devices, like a medical device, even like an implantable pacemaker has cybersecurity concerns. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there for a while, there are vulnerabilities where you could remotely, wirelessly connect to someone's pacemaker and cause
Oh,
shock them over and over.
is that a
Yeah,
thing? We can do that?
I used to be able to do it. They have since fixed it, but yes, there are things like that a
Okay.
lot. Yeah.
That is scary.
So I think these cyber devices, like most of us don't consider them implantables, like a pacemaker, a drug infusion pump for a medical device. Even like here where I live in Phoenix, Arizona, we have autonomous driving cars. So I take them all the time. So I get in the car and there's no driver.
No
But
driver?
if that right, so if that thing was hacked though, somebody could
Yeah.
cause the car to speed up, 130 miles an hour and run into a telephone pole and kill me. So we have to, like, the world is changing where
Gosh,
we're
yeah.
relying on a lot of things that could actually cause people to die or cause injury versus stolen data.
Yeah. I had something wild just now. Like, what if somebody's targeting a person and then you get on this autonomous vehicle and they say, oh, so and so is in this car, let's rig the whole system and then just direct him somewhere away from his destination. I mean,
That's a
maybe because
scenario, yeah.
yeah, that's scenario. Maybe because I watch too much television. Yeah,
Well, a lot of these things
but
are
it could
becoming
happen,
true.
right? Right? You say, oh, okay, maybe if you know if because you are somebody and then people wanna you know I don't know. And that it is, I mean, it's worth it, thinking about it. Okay, I mean, that's very legit, very valid. Yes, Christian, what is the biggest lesson you learned from starting and selling a business?
There's a lot of lessons. I think the biggest one is to, before you start your business, not after. I did this after my first one. I paid a lot of the dumb tax, as they say. I think
Mm-hmm.
is to define your niche, your target audience or client profile, and figure out what problem you solve for them and how
Oh,
you're going to deliver the messaging. My
right.
first business, I didn't do this. I just thought everybody needs cybersecurity. So I'm going to build a cybersecurity company. And because I didn't have a specific niche, my message was diluted and resonated with nobody. So it's very challenging to get clients. Now, my niche is medical device manufacturers that need to get approval in Europe or in the US or any other regulatory area. And my message is very clear to them. That's who we serve, and we know specifically what their issues are and how to communicate with them. So my business is doing much better. I've niched it down, very specific. But this is my second business. If I learned that lesson in my first business, it wouldn't have taken me as long to sell it, probably.
Yeah, but you wouldn't. I mean, you wouldn't know what to do like right from the get go, right? But
It's one of those things you can read all the books you want and take
mm,
classes, but until you actually do it, it
yeah.
doesn't like
It
it doesn't
doesn't work with
land.
me though. Yeah, it doesn't, like, you gotta hit first and then, oh, okay, this is actually wrong. Okay, let me do it a differently. And I like that. And then you mentioned something very, very good just now. I lost my train of thought. That's okay, I'll come back to me. What is the most difficult thing you overcame? Becoming a podcast host was a natural extension of my second act. And after spending 15 years in the corporate world, I've transitioned to helping individuals overcome challenges like navigating tough relationships, career burnout, and aligning their mission with their soul's calling. By certifying as an RTT hypnotherapist and a lifestyle coach, I've made it my mission to empower people to recreate the life they deserve and building a supportive community through my podcast. Now, let me ask, are you facing challenges like struggling to reprogram your mind to attract wealth, weight issues that feel like a constant yo-yo, insomnia or restless nights from daily worries, or just a lack of confidence in public speaking? If the answer is yes, visit www.thenicknearholisticlifestyle.com and grab a free hypnosis audio of these common struggles. It's a sneak peek into how my coaching works. Are you feeling shy? Don't be, because I'm as real as it gets. Let's connect on Instagram and LinkedIn and start your transformation today.
Probably recently, the most difficult thing was those blood clots, that whole scenario, thinking my life was over and almost dying. And then, while the doctor was telling me all that, I had to evaluate my life pretty quickly. Like all these images were going through my head.
Flashbacks.
Yeah, I was like, did I live a good life? Did I take risks? Did I love? Did I go for things? Ultimately, did I matter? Right. And
That's true.
I was okay with my answers. I've always tried to be, if I die tomorrow, not have regrets. Like go after the things I want to go after, not care what other people think, unless I care about those people, and just take the risk. My life has been about taking risks. I mean, they're not reckless risks, but like you mentioned, skydiving. I do things that are risky, but I like that feeling of the thrill, I guess, of doing those sort of things. Same thing with business. I feel like business is risky, starting your own business. I had lots of friends that told me I was stupid, basically, for leaving my
Yeah,
high-paying 9 to 5 job to
correct.
start a business. And
Yeah,
that went back to my initial sort of drive. I'm like, I can't let those people be right when they're telling me I'm going to fail. So I made it to make sure I didn't fail. Yeah.
thank you. How do you define success?
I think success for me is when it's not about money or any specific goal. It's how I feel about myself on a daily basis. If I feel comfortable in my own
That's a good one.
skin,
Yeah,
no matter what room I'm in, like if I'm in a room with like people that are more wealthy than me or whatever, if I feel comfortable with who I am, no matter what, I define that as success.
it just sounds like you've done a lot of work on yourself. I love that. Yeah.
I have done a lot of
Because
work.
because oftentimes if you feel worthless or hopeless, you wouldn't be able to see that because you're always feeling small. Even though you've already achieved or accomplished so many, you've racked up all of the accolades and achievements, right? But you still feel that you're not enough. So yeah, you've done a lot of work.
Yeah, well, it's exhausting to constantly feel like you're not enough.
Thank you.
And it's not,
Reach to the choir.
yeah, and it doesn't ultimately serve you.
Wow. Okay. What work are you most proud of so far?
I'm most proud of my second book, The In-Between Life in the Micro. It's more of a focused memoir, I would say. It was a very challenging book to write. So I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of what I've done with Blue Goat Cyber, this company. I've been able to build it bigger, smarter, faster in a year and a half than what took me 6 years with my first cybersecurity business, because I did learn those lessons. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more I got to learn, but I did reflect and try to do it much smarter this time.
Wow. Okay. What are you working on currently besides the book?
I'm working on 2 new books, actually. My goal is to become the market
Wow.
leader. Yeah,
Oh
my
my
goal is to
gosh.
become the market leader in medical device cybersecurity. So I have a book almost
Awesome.
done on medical device cybersecurity. And then I have another book I'm almost done with about the story we tell ourselves, this inner narrative. And I think we all have a story we tell ourselves. It kind of goes like, I'm just not good enough, or,
Yeah. Oh, I'm
right?
doing too much. I don't know. I'd
Yeah.
like to dim my light and, let other people say, but I know I have something.
Yeah,
It's
so that
contradict.
story
Yeah.
can empower you or hold you back, right? And that my book is about how to change that story to one that serves you, not one that holds you back.
Wow. 4 books now, right? Okay. Now, Christian, we're gonna pivot to a self-worth question because my podcast is about self-worth essentially. So the question for you, negative self-talk can significantly impact self-worth. What strategies can individuals use to challenge and change these destructive thought patterns?
Yeah, I have negative self-talk. I think we all do it at some point. I
Yeah.
try to minimize that, and I often think whatever I am telling myself, I'm reinforcing something. And I would rather reinforce something with a positive
Mm-hmm.
angle than a negative angle. And this goes back to my first book in the acknowledgement chapter. I talked about there's these two signs when they did a study with these two signs by a swimming pool, and the floor was wet. So one sign said, "Caution, wet floor, don't slip." The other
Oh,
sign said, "Caution, wet floor, walk carefully." So guess which sign resulted in more
nice.
people slipping? The one that said don't slip, because you're focused on that
This,
thing you don't
you
want
focus
to
on the
do.
slipping itself. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like, don't think about a pink elephant, then you're going to think about pink elephant.
exactly. Yeah. So when you get that negative dialogue, it's important to think if you keep acknowledging it, you're going to actually do more of the thing you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So I try to put the positive dialogue in my brain, which I meditate sometimes. Sometimes I just quiet the noise and tune into myself, and do various things or watch a YouTube video to get myself out of that state. There's plenty of
Mm-hmm.
motivational things, or sometimes I just put on binaural beats while I'm working. I don't know if you know about binaural beats, but that's
The one with the hertz, right? Like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
this one. Yeah.
Some of those are very calming, and it's almost like you can't help but be in a better mood and
Yes.
have positive thoughts by listening to that stuff.
Well, thank you for sharing your tips. And when you were saying those things, I remember just before coming on to this interview, because I posted something over on LinkedIn. It is an excerpt of me being interviewed for the first time when I was in LA last month, and it was my first in person being interviewed. So, of course, it is something, right? And then I wanted to share it to my on LinkedIn, and I've had this thought of, what if, what are people's perception of that and whatnot, yada yada yada. And then I remember, just don't self reject.
Mm.
Don't self reject. Don't
Yeah.
reject yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you publish books or do podcasts or create content, you've got to get over that. Otherwise, you're never going to
Oh
put anything
yeah. Oh
out
yeah.
there.
You're never gonna get past that. And yeah, you're actually right. Thank you so much. I needed that. Yeah. I mean, not many have been invited in Hollywood. I was invited in Hollywood, so I was like, Nick, this is your moment. Go and share. You'll attract your own tribe. So there's always gonna be people hating.
Yeah. But those are
Yeah.
the people generally not creating content. They're consuming content.
Yeah. Thank you, Christian. Yeah, they're not creating, and then all they do is like, oh yeah, she could have done this better or differently, right? Oh, okay, create your own content then.
Exactly.
Okay, what is your heart's greatest wish?
My heart's greatest wish,
Mm-hmm.
to feel at peace with my work, with my relationship, and with my life in general. Yep.
Do you have a mantra that you live by?
I have lots of mantras I live by. I think the biggest one is I don't want to be on my deathbed and have regrets. That's probably something that goes through my head a lot, because I've read quite a few books about people at their last moment while they're dying, and they talk about regrets, like not asking the woman out, not starting a business, having a family, not doing more adventurous stuff. Um, what it's different for everybody, but most people have regrets, and I don't want to have regrets. So I think when I'm making decisions, how that's going to affect me on my deathbed. And I try to make the decisions through that filter.
Ooh, wow, thank you. Again, a reminder for me. Is there anything that keeps you up at night, or do you sleep well?
I didn't sleep well last night at all. I had a bunch of nightmares about some aliens that took
Oh
me,
no.
and we're trying to we're trying to take over humanity. I was trapped trying to save humanity somehow.
Or maybe it's related to your second book. Or maybe like, another opening for another book. A fiction one this time.
Yeah, yeah. So what keeps me up at night right now is my business. Like I said, I want to become the market leader. I'm trying to have balance, though. I don't want to let it consume me, where I let my relationship fail, which I've done that stuff in the past, or I let my health suffer. So I'm trying to have the balance, but also the drive and the motivation to become the market leader and to hit my targets. But I'm trying to do it smarter this time with that balance. But yeah, that keeps me up at night because we launched our own podcast for my business. We've got all these
Oh,
things going on. I'm
congratulations.
doing it. Yeah, well, thank you. I'm doing a talk in California next week. So I have these things I got to get done
I know we
that
have that.
when
Yeah,
I go to
that
bed,
list.
they don't leave my head. I can't just shut them
Yeah,
off.
like I targeted to complete at least two, but I managed to cross off one. Yeah, tomorrow it is, and then tomorrow comes. I guess coming back to that, just being kind to yourself as well.
Yeah.
You're giving your best. You're doing your best.
I have to do that too and say, I've actually accomplished a lot. Maybe not as much as I want, but
Yeah,
today I got these 3 big things
job
done that I
well
wanted to get
done.
done. Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
And that posting, I had that on my to do as well. It's been there for 3 days. Today I got to like tick yes, and it's out from my reminder. So okay, good job, Nicolette. Then sit here and talk to you. So and it's almost 9, so it's okay. Yeah, I'm okay. This is good. Yeah. Okay. If you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
I think this quote's been said before, and we kind of talked about it, but it would be become more to attract more.
Going to let that sink in for our listeners as well. Have become more to attract more. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to do the
That's true.
work on ourselves first. And I witness people like in relationships, and I have a lot of friends, and I know people that have like the same kind of relationship over and over and over, but they don't do anything to change themselves, so they attract the same type of person over and over and over. It never works. So it's like you've got to change yourself, do the work.
That's a heavy hitting quote, but people do not want to face themselves because it's the most terrifying parts of themselves that they often feel, because whatever it is that you're not healed within is going to trigger. And then when you come into union with somebody, and it's and then the whole cycle continues, and then you wonder, you complain why you're attracting the same person.
Right.
Yeah, do the work, people.
Just do the work.
Do the
Exactly.
work. Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna say like once you've done the work, you're done for life. No, you're continually doing the work until you're 6 feet underground. At least that's what I believe.
Me too.
But then start the work. Change. I mean, choose to change.
Yeah, that goes back to that story we tell ourselves. If we say we're not good enough, or there's no good men out there's no good women out there, whatever your story, then that's going to become true, right? So change the story.
Change the story. Yeah. Okay. How can people reach out to you?
They can find me on LinkedIn or on my personal brand website, christianespinosa.com, my company, bluegoatcyber.com, and I'm on pretty much most social media. My books are on
Okay.
Amazon and Audible as well.
Amazon. Awesome. Okay. And there you have it, everyone. You've heard it straight from the source. Before we wrap up, Christian, I'd like to thank you personally for the incredible work that you're doing for the world. Despite the challenges, you continue to push forward, paving the way for those that will follow, for those who will follow in your footsteps. Your dedication is truly inspiring. Well, listeners, this has been the podcast with that provocatively titled name, You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Have you ever found yourself feeling worthless? You're not alone. But more importantly, ask yourself a deeper question. If I'm worthless, then why am I here? The truth is, your soul chose to be here energetically, coming all the way from the ethers. For that reason alone, you are worthy and you are enough. And with that, this is Christian Espinosa, our guest of the day, and I'm Nick Niaras, your host, signing off. Thank you so much, Christian, for your time.
Well, thank you for having me on.